Well, today's interesting. I will be reviewing the same story, but through two different mediums. I will first review the book of Lovecraft Country, and then the TV series of Lovecraft Country, although I should technically say mini-series now, since they decided not to continue with the TV series. It's only one season, but that's for later to discuss. So let's get right to it, shall we? Lovecraft Country, the novel. Story for Lovecraft Country is Chicago, 1954. When his father goes missing, 22-year-old Army veteran Atticus Turner embarks on a road trip to New England to find him. Accompanied by his Uncle George, publisher of the Safe Negro Travel Guide, and his childhood friend Letitia, on their journey to the manor of Samuel Braithwaite, heir to the estate that owned one of Atticus's ancestors, they encounter both mundane terrors of white America and malevolent spirits that seem straight out of weird tales George devours. Atticus discovers his father in chains, held prisoner by a secret cabal, the Order of the Ancient Dawn, led by Braithwaite and his son Caleb, which has gathered to perform a ritual that shockingly centers on Atticus, and his one hope of salvation may be the seed of his and the whole Turner clan's destruction. A chimerical blend of magic, power, hope, and freedom that stretches across time, touching diverse members of two black families, Lovecraft Country is a devastating kaleidoscope portrait of racism, the terrifying specter that still haunts us today. Now, first off, just by looks alone, I love how this book looks. I specifically got this copy of the book because it looks like a book from the 1950s, and it looks like it's gone through hell and back. It's wear and tear, the pages feel great, and it smells like a book from the 1950s. I mean, wow. There's a whole topic I can go on, the smelling of books and how books smell, but I'm just going to focus on this book here. It smells, looks, feels like a book from the 1950s, and deservedly so. Now, I just wish it didn't have this little circle on here that says soon to be an HBO TV series, but I still love this copy. If you are a fan or have read Lovecraft's work before and aware of H.P. Lovecraft himself, you know that he was a racist xenophobe. And while many writers nowadays of various different religious, ethnic, and even sexual backgrounds have evolved the Cthulhu mythos forward with recent entries into the mythos, and to doing away with those racist xenophobia themes, they've actually updated it and made a move forward. This book acknowledges Lovecraft, those flaws with Lovecraft's work, but also decides to put it front and center and to make it more of a historical drama as opposed to just straight horror, and showing that the true monsters is really racism and the things we deal with every day, whereas the monsters of science fiction, horror, and other things are something completely different and actually not as something we deal with every day. I especially if you like reading Lovecraft and how Lovecraft writes his stories and how they're loosely connected, you will really enjoy this book. It is tense. It is scary at times. It is thrilling. It's a page turner. It is actually an easy read. It's not that complex. It's not written like Lovecraft, where it's kind of poetic and you kind of have to reread it to make sure you read it properly. The characters are kind of simplistic, I will say, but at the same time, they're very palpable and very connectable. You kind of feel they kind of like are a blank slate for everybody to put themselves in there to place our own experiences, our own fears into these characters and kind of be a part of them, as opposed to as opposed to anything else. The way the stories are structured, like which chapter it goes in the path, it's very interesting, and it's interesting to see the different characters and their themes and their arcs. And sometimes it's even shocking how some of the stories, like one story, of course, if you've seen the TV show, you're probably going to know what I'm talking about, is Ruby's transformation. That was an interesting episode in the TV series, but for the book, it is interesting. You actually really get into her mind more than the TV show does. So it's interesting seeing from her point of view the things that happened during that chapter. And also you can, even though, yes, the TV show did a brilliant job translating that to the screen, it's more personal, and because you're in her mind, you kind of feel as she does when she goes through the transformation, and the reason why she continues to do that over time and throughout the stories. While there are no Shoggoths in this book, there's no like monsters per se. There are hints of the monsters. They kind of talk about the monsters in a very Lovecraftian way, where you don't really see them. They're there, but you don't really see them. And because like I said, the real monsters are the people we deal with every day, and the racism that's still unfortunately within this country to this day. But the themes, the characters, everything's just pretty well done. And I love the quotes from different sources at the beginning of each chapter that kind of very much set the tone for the chapter, and it actually kind of gives you a tease of what the chapter is about. The spells, curses, and magic is very suggestive, very interesting to interpret, and it's hard to describe here. It's done in a way that it's not overly complex. It's simple, yet it doesn't feel like it's pandering down to like the simple-minded or anything like that. It still has this air of awe and mysticism. It's simple but slightly complex, and it's an enjoyable read, especially if you have or you like reading Lovecraft. It's done in a very similar style, just not poetic. Much like Lovecraft, the stories are loosely connected. They have same characters to connect the stories, but they don't necessarily take place one after another. And there's like I'm sorry, I lost track here. The stories can be read not necessarily right after another. They can't where was I going with this? Sorry, I'm doing this off the cuff. The stories can be standalone is what I'm trying to get at. They can be standalone. They don't necessarily have to be read in a certain order. Even though, yes, they do technically take place one after another, they're done in a way that if you actually read a chapter ahead of the previous one, it's okay. It's just later on towards the end when they do reference this stuff, you're like, man, I don't remember this happening. Oh, I missed a chapter. So it's like most of the stories, except for the final chapter, it's like you can read them by themselves pretty much. And while the end of the book was very interesting to read, quite climactic, but I can understand why they changed it for the TV series. And I will go through the TV series in a minute. Matt Ruff as a writer is actually pretty good. Like I said, he's kind of simplistic. His writing is very simplistic. It kind of reminds me of Michael Crichton's writing, because Michael Crichton wrote like he was writing a screenplay where it told the action. It didn't really go into much detail of what was going on. It was just what the characters were doing, what they were thinking, and the dialogue. So it is a quick read and simple, and it's still engaging. It doesn't. It may not be challenging to most readers, but it is a fun read and something to really escape into. It is really good. I give this book like 5 stars out of 5. There's so many layers to describe how good this book is, from the Cthulhu mythos to the many themes about racism, and how it's taking place from the point of view of an African-American characters, all African-American characters, with few Caucasian characters or even Asian-American characters. There's just so many layers there of about representation and and the struggles everybody goes to, the historical moments and all that. It's just so many layers to talk about that I can also talk about with the TV series as well. But it is worth reading. Even if you've already seen the TV series like I did, it is worth reading. If you watch the TV show, you'll want to read the book. And if you read the book first, you'll want to watch the TV series. You have to. They both complement each other very well. And with that, I would like to transition to the TV series. Lovecraft Country. And the story for this one is a Korean War veteran in search of his father travels across 1950s Jim Crow America with his childhood friend and uncle in the wildly original HBO series Lovecraft Country. Their journey soon becomes a struggle to survive as they battle racist terrors and monsters that could be ripped from an H.P. Lovecraft paperback. Chock full of pulpy, edge-of-your-seat action, each episode melds mystery, horror, and sci-fi while taking viewers to a new place in time and space. Now, like I said, I watched this before reading the book, and this show is completely amazing. From episode 1, you are just hooked. Story-wise, it is very excellent. It makes you go, okay, we got a through line here that's actually interesting. I want to see what goes on. And then you got the characters, very well-drawn characters that you just easily connect to and latch on to. I mean, I have not been disappointed with the character in this show. I felt like they were all very well written, very well done. And I love the actors portraying each and every one of them. It was just a spectacular cast. The settings were great. The locations were great. The episodes were very well written, simple yet complex. The character arcs were just brilliant. And the monsters were very well too. This one actually showed the monsters, not just the racism, but the actual H.P. Lovecraftian monsters. They were just beautifully well done. Even though, yes, H.P. Lovecraft wrote about Shoggoths as massive blobs, the Shoggoths in the show are more like the quote-unquote dogs from Ghostbusters, just larger and with many different eyes and no horns. But they were very intimidating and interesting. And it's interesting, much like the book, how each episode is very much standalone, just loosely connected. In fact, there's actually a through storyline through each episode that starts from the first episode and continues on from the other ones. It's just that the isolated story that centers on the episode, like for instance with Ruby and her transformation, that takes place over the whole episode, that is just one singular story for that episode and can be standalone. It's intercut with things happening that started from episode 1 going through it. And in fact, the Ruby's transformation trails off into the other episodes as well. So it's more interconnected than the book, but it makes for great drama and to see how the other characters are doing as well. And to see how we get from point A to point B and C and D as well, because those storylines starting from episode 1 trail into the other ones have reactions and actually cause things that happen in the other episodes. It actually gives characters more purpose, more determination, and actually reason to do the things that they did. Let's see. But a lot of things were very well done. I loved it. And then when you actually compare it to the book, like compare these two together, whether you read or saw one before the other, they actually complement each other. Very much like Philip K. Dick's novel Do Androids Dream of the Electric Sheep and its movie adaptation Blade Runner complemented one each other. You can read and watch them back and forth and be like, you know what, there were changes made, but they work well with each other very well. Like, as you probably noticed, when I said Attica's last name is Turner, whereas it was Freeman in the TV series. And Letitia in the book was more pious than she was in the TV series. She was actually more daring in the TV series and more of a firecracker, and I love that. But those changes were with reason and actually made the show better, and also kind of complemented the book in a way, because as the book went on, Letitia got more and more bold and brave. So you can see that they just made her that way from the start in the TV show, as opposed to her developing that throughout the book. And while I was sad that they killed off the character of George in the TV series, it was also a good thing because the character of Montrose didn't really have an arc in the book, so they actually developed Montrose a bit more and gave him a background and more character development, and actually more interesting than he was in the book. And the ending was changed as well. In fact, they even acknowledged the changes in one of the episodes because of something that happens with time travel. But even with the things that changed in the show, if you read the book and you see, episode 9 is not in the book, but you can see where they started it from, where it was inspired by, because there's a chapter where Montrose goes to a house that's kind of like trapped in its own loop, like time loop, and he has to get some notes from there. And you can see when you read that story and then you watch episode 9, you go, okay, that's what this episode's based on. They just added a lot more to it to not only make it more interesting, engaging, and thrilling, and also to add tension. It very much complements where it came from, the origins of that episode, and what the chapter talking about the story for the episode was all about. It very much hits the same notes. It hits very much the themes and some of the situations that happen, just in a different location and overall story. But in some cases the TV show did do better, but in some cases the book did well as well, because of just because of standaloneness, and also just more, I want to say, down to earth as well. The show was more fantastical, whereas the book was more down to earth and tried to be as realistic as possible. And at the same time, both did what was something that Jordan Peele's been doing for a while with his horror movies of Get Out and Us. This show and the book was trying to do as well, which was to put things we usually see with a full Caucasian cast, but with just African American characters this time around, and cast as well. And even with the TV show, even Asian Americans, or even Asian characters, because one of them's Korean. So you get like horror stories, science fiction stories, and drama, and thrilling moments, and gore, and action. Things we usually see with, like I said, full Caucasian cast, now with African American characters and actors as well. And we see all that and get like a mixed bag that is just fun to watch. Doesn't matter if what gender or race you are. It is something very, very enjoyable to watch, but at the same time progressing forward in terms of media and media representation of a community and group of people. And I highly recommend both. They are both great to watch. I give this show 5 stars. I also give the book 5 stars. Both are, whether you just want to read the book or watch the TV series, or like me, do both very well worth it. Very much worth it. Must see, must read, must watch. And plenty to analyze with both in terms of the genres, representation, the themes of racism, and many other themes, interpretations. Like I said, there's layers upon layers to analyze with both the book and the TV series. And very much open for discussing with anybody out there. Alright then, I have gone for more than long enough on this topic before I start rambling even more than I already have. So, thank you all for watching. I hope you have a lovely day. Stay safe, wash your hands, wear a mask. We love you. Bye.